Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. My name's Patrick Fingler, and in this webinar I'm going to show you how you can extend Web App Builder for ArcGIS using Geocortex Essentials. So I'm first going to begin by providing a brief introduction to Web App Builder for ArcGIS for those who are unfamiliar with what Web App Builder is. And then for the majority of the webinar today, I'm going to be covering how you can extend Web App Builder even further to satisfy your business requirements using Geocortex Reporting, Geocortex Workflow, and Geocortex Printing. And then we'll touch on some customer examples that leverage these technologies to get more out of their investment in the ArcGIS platform. And then I'll cover some resources that you can access to learn more or try out the software for yourselves. So Web App Builder for ArcGIS. It's a lightweight viewer framework that Esri provides that allows GIS analysts and GIS developers to quickly build purposeful WebGIS applications. It ships with a collection of out-of-the-box tools, which are called widgets, that allow you to perform a variety of common GIS operations. It's really easy to configure and also use if you're an end user. So let's just quickly dive in and see what Web App Builder is all about. So if any of you are using ArcGIS Online or Portal for ArcGIS, Web App Builder actually ships with both of those platforms. Here I'm using ArcGIS Online, and if I wanted to create a Web App Builder for ArcGIS application, I would just select Create here using the Web App Builder, and this will allow me to create a sample Web App Builder application. I'll just call this WAB, which I use to abbreviate Web App Builder, and I'll click OK. In doing so, again, I'm not a developer. I come from a GIS background, so I'm not leveraging Esri's ArcGIS API for JavaScript to build out custom WebGIS applications. So Web App Builder provides me with a nice framework to start rapidly building WebGIS applications that my end users can access and use. And the first thing that you'll want to do is add a web map. So here I'll add a web map. And if you're not familiar with creating web maps, it's just a really simple process in ArcGIS Online or Portal. And I'm going to select this web map that I've created that I'm going to be using for the demos today. And here we've got some hydrants, some work orders, service requests, tax parcels, and some pretty typical municipal data. Right now it's just really a lightweight application for viewing my data, but if I wanted to extend it further, I would then navigate to the widget tab here and then start adding tools that my end users can leverage. Again, these are called widgets, and there's a ton of widgets, and Esri continues to add additional functionality to these widgets. For example, you can edit features, you can search for and query features, you can even include charts. Now, these might do everything that you need to do, or they might do, 90%, 80% of what you need to do, and you might want to kind of extend them or customize them a little bit. Now, if you want to begin customizing these widgets, you traditionally have to do custom development. And over the course of the webinar today, I'm going to be showing you how you can still build out custom widgets to satisfy more unique business requirements using our Geocortex Reporting, Geocortex Workflow, and Geocortex Printing technology. So if you've started playing around with Web App Builder for ArcGIS and started building WebGIS applications, leveraging those widgets, it's possible that you've reached a point where you've wanted to kind of customize or develop your own widgets. So what if you want to extend Web App Builder even further, and you're kind of reaching limitations with the out-of-the-box widgets that Esri provides. Now, I mentioned they do a great job, but many organizations still want a more custom, tailored fit application to satisfy unique business requirements. So if you're contemplating that, then traditionally you have to do custom widget development. Now, this can be time consuming, difficult to maintain. It requires development expertise. Again, I'm a GIS analyst. I'm not a programmer, so I'm not going to be doing any custom widget development myself. So I guess finding staff to do the development can be also challenging. And not even that, but if you do have developers, the widgets that they develop can be vulnerable to technology change. For example, when you develop a custom widget, you have to decide the version of the ArcGIS JavaScript API that you want to build on top of. Most developers use the 3.x JavaScript API because it's got the most functionality, and that's currently what the ArcGIS Online and Portal for ArcGIS versions are using and leveraging. However, Esri is now pushing and developing new functionality in their 4.x JavaScript API, which has the ability to render 3D web scenes, and it has just a whole number of new capabilities that organizations are going to want to take advantage of in the future. And if you want to then migrate an application from the 3.x to the 4.x JavaScript API, you're actually going to have to completely rewrite those widgets. And again, making it really vulnerable to technology change. With custom widget development using Geocortex, you don't have to be a programmer. You don't need to compile or maintain any code. And that really results in being able to minimize the time and effort to rapidly develop and create these custom widgets, ultimately leaving you with the flexibility of customization using a configuration framework. Now, if you are a programmer, you can go really deep with the products that I'll be showing you today. Our developers at Geocortex use them all the time for doing work with customers on site and so on. And the last note I wanted to mention is that the widgets that we develop are built on top of the Esri platform. So the solutions and widgets that you build will be able to be migrated to the 4.x JavaScript API. So they're not vulnerable to technology change. So they're essentially future-proofing your application and investment in the ArcGIS platform. The first product that I'm going to be covering is Geocortex Reporting. And this allows you to create printable PDF reports that connect to the geodatabase, non-spatial data, and you can include maps and charts inside of these reports. So let's just jump in to a demo. All right, so I'm going to navigate over to my other web app builder for ArcGIS application here. Again, I'm referencing the same web map, but in this scenario, I'm using the web app builder for ArcGIS Developer Edition, which is extensible, which means I can add custom widgets to web app builder. So here you can see if I click plus, we've got 3 widgets that I've added: my reporting widget, my workflow widget, and my printing widget. Now, I mentioned the developer edition of Web App Builder for ArcGIS is extensible, but also the edition that ships with Portal for ArcGIS, that is extensible as well. So you'll be able to add these widgets to that. And essentially they're widgets that allow you to build custom widgets. But here we've got my web map, and I've got some fire hydrants on it. And something you just can't do right now in Web App Builder is generate, intuitive reports on your spatial data. So here I've got a fire hydrants layer, and when I add my reporting widget to Web App Builder, it'll give me the option to then generate a report on this feature. So if I click Run Report, we'll then launch this option here, and I can generate a hydrant inspections report. Now this fire hydrant asset has a one-to-many relationship. So I've got data on the actual asset itself, and then I've got a related table here, which shows all of the inspectors as well. Additionally, we do have attachments enabled, but this particular asset that I've selected doesn't have any attachments configured. So let's open this up. So here you can see I've got a printed PDF report that I could then share with some colleagues that is highlighting my hydrant on the map. It's pulling in that web map layer and symbology. I've got information on the actual hydrant asset up here. I've got no image available because I haven't added any attachments on this data. And then I've got a one-to-many relationship here. So these are all of the inspections that have currently been performed on this hydrant. Now, let's say I want to create a multi-feature report. Here I've got the ability to use Esri's or web app builders out of the box widgets, such as the select widget here, which allows me to select an area. So let's say I'm interested in these 3 hydrants here. And I can then select this kind of 3 radio button options here. And anytime you have a selection within Web App Builder for ArcGIS, you'll see this option to generate a report on that spatial data that you have selected, if you've configured a report for that spatial data. So here I'll click Run Report, run my hydrant inspections report, and now we're going to see a multi-feature report displaying inside of Web App Builder. And I believe in this scenario, we'll actually get to see some attachments displaying as well. So we'll just give this a second here to run. And if I open it up, here you can see I've got 2 features here, and then I've got a 3rd feature down below. And here we've got some comments saying that the hydrant is getting rusty, and we also have an attachment being displayed. Additionally, we've got some bookmarks, so you could easily navigate between each of these features to find a particular feature of interest. Again, you could have a multi-page report with 30 hydrants that you want to present to your field worker if they need to go inspect them or something like that. So that's an example of creating a single feature and or running a single feature and running a multi-feature report from Web App Builder. Now, what does the back end look like? How do you as a GIS administrator build out these reports and add them to Web App Builder? So if we navigate to Geocortex Reporting here, this is our web-based designer interface where you can configure these templates. Here this is the hydrant inspections report template that we've configured. So it's really simple to get started. You just create a data source connection. You add a connection to ArcGIS, but you can also add connections to non-spatial data sources like Oracle or SQL Server, and you can join that data as well to your spatial data, so long as there's a primary key. But if you just want to add an ArcGIS data source, you just give it a name and enter in the REST endpoint to that service. Once you do so, you can then add that layer, and then once you add that layer, you'll get a list of all of the attributes, and it's simply just dragging and dropping the attributes onto the design surface and using the tools here on the left to kind of configure, stylize your reports. Now, one interesting tool here that we have on the left is this feature picture box. And this allows you to connect to any web map within your ArcGIS Online or portal for ArcGIS organization that has been shared with you or that you have created, and you can essentially choose the web map that you want to display when you're kind of selecting these features. So it's an intuitive interface, and you just have to manually enter in the web map of interest, select it, and then when you run that report, it will generate a feature map with that template. Additionally, here I've got a single feature attachment and a multi-feature attachment tool. So here I've added the single feature attachment option, which then will generate a single feature attachment if it's on that feature or the first attachment within that feature. If you have a service that has multiple attachments, then you can always use the multi-feature attachment tool as well. And then we've also got our one-to-many relationship here. So everything in this kind of bottom area is the related table that's associated with my hydrant asset. So that's kind of a lot compiled into one single report, but let's just quickly show you how you create a really basic report from scratch. So I've already added a data source connection to this tax parcel service. So it's simply just a REST endpoint, okay? And I'm going to then do File, New, and select a layer report wizard. And I'll click create, use an existing data source, and click next, select my tax parcels data source here. And then these are all the layers within my map server, and I'm after my tax parcel service here, and I'll click finish. So it's a blank report, but I can start configuring and adding additional functionality to this report. And I could, for example, start dragging and dropping attributes. So let's get the parcel ID, maybe the owner's name, maybe the site address, and the year it was built. And I can drag these onto the design surface. And then I've got a little table highlighting my attributes. I could then stylize this if I wanted to. And let's just give it a little border here. And that's looking pretty good. Now, what's really powerful is without even having to add this to Web App Builder, you can actually preview this to confirm that it's working. So by default, this report is configured to accept object IDs from your features. So if I click preview and just pass in, I don't know, the first 3 or 4 object IDs and click run, we can see that instantly I'm receiving data from that ArcGIS REST endpoint. Now I can start, continuing to extend this report. I could add that feature map, for example. So let's add a feature map here. Maybe just put it at the bottom. And if there was attachments, I could also add an attachment if I wanted to. Select the web map, search for my government web map here, click OK. And now when I preview this again, we'll start seeing, without even having to save it, which can be dangerous, I guess. You could do a lot of work here without saving it. But if you're just wanting to create a quick proof of concept or a production-ready report, this preview functionality is really, really useful. So here I'm generating a preview of those 3 features. It's going to take a little bit longer to generate this one because we're actually passing the geometry to the report template. And now I have a multi-feature report showing my feature maps on here. Now, what if we want to add this to Web App Builder for ArcGIS? So here's my report. First of all I have to do is now click File, Save As, and give it a name. So I'll call this Webinar Tax Parcels, and I'll click Save. When doing so, this will store the report in ArcGIS Online. So here I can see that we've generated a URL. I can select View, and now I can decide who I want to share this report with. So this report's now living as an item in my ArcGIS Online, and I can then use Esri's sharing methods to share this. So I've now shared it. Let's go back to my Web App Builder for ArcGIS application. And here I've added my reporting widget. If I select this configure widget option here, I'll see there's a number of reports that I've already configured on several of my layers. I'm going to add a new report and call this, or search for webinar, which is the report that I just created. Click on webinar. I can select the layer that I want to connect it to. So my tax parcels layer. I see this one's missing a layer, so let's connect this one to my fire hydrants as well. And I'll click OK. So now let's use my select option here and select a couple of tax parcels here. And if I scroll down, I can see I've selected 5 tax parcels. I can run a report. And here I've got 3 reports. I've got my mailing labels report, my tax parcels report that I haven't ran any either of these. And then we've got our webinar tax parcels report, which I could then run and then generate that report. Here we can see the report's done downloading, and I've got a report containing the 5 features that I selected within Web App Builder for ArcGIS. So in summary, Geocortex Reporting provides you with a clean, straightforward design experience that allows you as a GIS administrator to really configure reports that satisfy your customers' business requirements. You can create charts in these reports, you can connect to spatial data, non-spatial data, add QR codes as you can see here, and over the course of the webinar, I'll be showing you some additional report templates that really highlight the flexibility of the designer. Additionally, it's a report designer that's completely designed for the modern ArcGIS platform. So it works in Web App Builder for ArcGIS applications. So if you have reporting requirements, then it's a solution that can allow you to generate reports on your spatial data. Let's transition into Geocortex Workflow, which is another product that we provide, which essentially allows you to build custom widgets without coding. Let's dive in. So here I'm going to navigate to the same Web App Builder for ArcGIS application here, and I'll click Done. And you'll see here I've got the out-of-the-box select widget, but I've also added 3 widgets here. And these, I've added them using Geocortex Workflow. So I'm first going to run a widget, and then we can, dive into how they're actually put together. So let's run this search parcels widget. And it's asking me to locate an address. So these forms can be completely configured to satisfy your end user requirements. So here in this scenario, I just simply want my end users to enter an address. We've got an autocomplete box here displaying. And the map will then pan to that address. It'll select that parcel on the map, and then it's asking me to then buffer it. So I can buffer it by 30 feet. And then I'm performing a buffer and then returning all of the parcels within that buffer. Here I can see I've selected 5 parcels, and then I can generate a report on them. So here we can see I'm now passing these 5 object IDs to a reporting template that I can open up here. Search for my tax parcels report. And I believe this is the one right here. Click open. And again, this is a little bit more of a comprehensive report that has charts. It's got Google Street View imagery, QR codes, and so on. So let's go back to our Web App Builder for ArcGIS application and open up our report. So here I can see I've created a stacked bar chart displaying the land value versus improvement value of my 5 selected parcels. We're dynamically creating Google Street View imagery. I've also got a QR code that can be scanned, which essentially just navigates to that parcel's address in Google Maps and displays it there. And you can see here that that's the associated Google Street View imagery on the left there. So a little bit more of a comprehensive report that can also be called through a more intuitive guided interaction rather than having to select features on the map using the select widget. I'm now using a workflow, which is a little bit easier for end user to kind of perform a particular business task. Here we can see this is the image where I'm actually dynamically creating that Google Street View functionality, and built into the report designer is this expression editor. And here I can see I'm navigating to Google Maps API, and then I'm supplying the site address, city, state, and a zip code. So we're dynamically creating that image on the fly because we have access to all of these features. So how do you put this workflow technology together, right? How does an end user actually build a workflow? So here we can see this is the search address workflow that I just ran. So it's this particular workflow here that presents the end user with an option to enter an address and then buffer that and select the parcels. So here we've got a form that allows the end users to enter an address, buffer that by a particular distance, and then if the user clicks submit, we have logic to then buffer it. So these are activities, which are all on the left here, which are pre-built logic that performs a particular action. There's GIS operations, there's editing operations, working with routes, and simply you provide it with an input and it generates an output. So here I'm providing the user selected geometry, the distance, and the units from that previous form. It's performing that buffer. I'm then performing a query, and I'm passing the output of that buffer to my query so that we're only selecting parcels that fall within that buffer. So that's kind of how you put a workflow together. If we wanted to build a quick workflow from scratch, I can click File, New. This is logging me in with my ArcGIS Online credentials. I can then search for a blank workflow. add a display form, which is probably the most common activity, and it's the activities that allow you to create that user interface. And I can add a text box here, give it a title. I'll call this user information. We'll just ask the user for their name. And you can see that this has an element ID of text box 1. If I added like a horizontal rule or something like that, just to stylize it, it's got an element ID of horizontal rule 1. If I go back, I can see that every activity that I add also has an ID called form1. And that's how you pass values and variables from one activity to another. I'm just going to add this buffer activity here, and you can see that's called buffer1. And again, at any point in time, you can change that ID. So I might want to just present a prompt after this display form is performed. That just gives me the name that the user enters. In order to do that, I can open up this little expression editor here, type equals, and this will search my workflow for all of my activities. I can type form1, which is what I'm after, and then I can drill into the form, which is the state. The result is, did they click submit or cancel? And then I can select my text box 1 and the value that that user enters. So I'm not programming, I'm just adding points and dotting into the objects within my workflow. And I can zoom in that a little bit further for if it's a little bit hard to see. So I'll click OK, and I can click File, Save As, call this webinar workflow, and click Save. Now again, if you're wondering how you actually get access to these widgets, you just navigate to Info, Deployment, Download Workflow Widgets for Web App Builder. That'll download a zip that you can then deploy into your developer edition of Web App Builder. It includes the widgets, and then when you add them, they'll display in your Web App Builder instance. Again, we've created and stored this workflow in ArcGIS Online, and I could then share it. And if I go back to Web App Builder here, I can then add this workflow that I just created, give it a name if I wanted to, and I can search for it, search for webinar. That's my webinar workflow that I just created. I can click OK. And now when I run it, it's asking me for the user's information. I type Patrick and click submit. It's a super basic workflow, but it says Patrick. And that's the idea that you can start rapidly iterating and testing this functionality on the fly. So if I wanted to add like a drop-down list to this, or a geometry picker, if I want my end users to interact with the map, I could simply add a geometry picker, click save, and then if I go back to my workflow and run it, we'll see I now have a geometry picker, which allows me to start interacting with the map. And that's really how you develop these workflows. If we wanted to see a more comprehensive workflow that's not searching for data, but also editing data, here you can see this is one for inspecting hydrants. So this is a workflow that allows me to either use my own geolocation to find assets around me. This is navigating to Victoria, which is where our office is situated, or there's no assets there, so I'm going to manually select my location on the map, perform a buffer of 300 feet, and find any hydrants that fall within my buffer. If I select a hydrant, we're then routing to that particular hydrant from our location. And if I select a different hydrant, I'm now routing from this location to that location. I can then view past inspections, so I can see what previous work's been done. And I can then perform a new inspection, enter my name as Patrick Fingler, say that the condition's now in poor shape, and I'll say that the hydrant is leaking. I can then upload a photo. This is a photo I have of a leaky hydrant. And then I can click submit and process this form or this related inspection to that actual hydrant. So here I can see this is the hydrant asset. My attachment got successfully added, and then I can view the related tables, and here my inspection got performed and my comments just got added at this current date and time. So in summary, Geocortex Workflow allows you to provide intuitive, guided end user interactions. You can configure these dynamic forms that can step your field workers through a particular business process, whether it's searching for data or editing it, running geoprocessing tools, performing routes, a variety of different operations that can be completely designed by you as a GIS analyst. Again, best of all, you don't need to be a programmer to create these workflows. And as I already mentioned, these widgets that you create will work in the 3.x version of Esri's JavaScript API as well as the 4.x JavaScript API. So essentially future-proofing your applications and making it so that you don't have to rewrite or maintain any custom code. I'm now going to transition into Geocortex Printing, and it's a product that we offer that allows you to generate high quality, high resolution map print outputs in all sizes. And it's the newest product to the suite of our products that work in Web App Builder for ArcGIS. So let's dive in. All right, so let's go back to my Web App Builder for ArcGIS application here. And here you can see I've got my buffer that I created and I've got some routes. I might now want to generate a print template of this data so that, when I'm out in the field, I know where to go and investigate. So here I've added my printing widget to the map, and I can run this 8.5 by 11 template and enter a title for this. So I'm going to call this route to hydrant, and I'll say created by Patrick Fingler, and click Run. And what we're doing is we're now extracting all of the layer information from this kind of map extent and compiling this into a print template. We'll include the graphics as well as the legend information that is displayed here on the map. Here we can see that the print template's done downloading, so let's open it up. And here we can see I've got a nice print template showing my geometry here, and it's also only showing the hydrants that were within the extent within the legend. So if we actually navigate to like Web App Builder here and look at the legend, we can see that there's actually a lot of different types of fire hydrants on the map, but our printing technology has the functionality that allows you to only generate the layer symbology of the features that are within the current map extent. So here we're kind of filtering that down, and here we can see that we're only selecting, this legend information for these particular hydrants within our extent. Additionally, I've got a nice little overview map here. My title got added, as well as my name and information here that I passed into the report template. If I wanted to, I can navigate to the underlying print template here. So again, this looks very similar to the report designer that I showed previously. You can change the templates as you want. We have a lot of out-of-the-box templates all the way up from 8.5 to ANSI E, and you can extend them and create your own sizes as you need. And if I wanted to, I could change this to, for example, a different base map like this capital city app. Here you can see my legend. I've enabled smart filtering, so that's that filtering where we're only seeing the legend information that's within the features within the extent. And let's save this and then rerun it within our Web App Builder for ArcGIS application. So let's rerun our print template here, click Done, and rerun it. I'll just leave the default map and title. And here we can see it's done downloading. And here I've got a different overview map. So I didn't have to refresh my Web App Builder instance. I've just quickly, rapidly changed my print template on the fly. Again, it's the same process for creating those print templates. You save them, and they'll be listed as an item in ArcGIS Online. And then you simply just navigate to Web App Builder for ArcGIS, add the printing widget, and then find the print template of interest that you want to select. So hopefully that will streamline any printing needs that you or users within your organization might have. So just in summary, with Geocortex Printing, what you see is what you get, and that's the functionality that we've integrated into it to allow for that smart filtering functionality so that you only see the features and legend information for those features within that extent. Additionally, If you want to go big and use really large size print templates, then that's completely supported. So it's a printing solution that works for small templates all the way up to large size e-size plots. So I just wanted to quickly highlight this customer example from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, who had a requirement for generating a road inventory report to support transportation planning activities. Now, their road network contains nearly 500,000 road records representing over 36,000 miles of road, and they required a really performant report that could aggregate all of their road segment assets by name and categorize them by jurisdiction in this annual inventory report that they could then share with the public and other stakeholders. So let's quickly dive in. So here I've got another web app builder for ArcGIS application that we developed for the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. Here we can see there's all of the different jurisdictions within Massachusetts, and within this jurisdiction, there's a substantial amount of road networks that they needed to inventory. So if I zoom into Boston, you can see here there's a huge number of roads that they needed to inventory. So we built a workflow that allows them to simply search by the name of a city or by selecting it on the map. So if I select Boston, for example, I can then select next. It'll then zoom out and select that city, and then I can generate a road inventory report that includes all of the road network data for all of Boston. And it's a very performant report, and we were able to make it so performant by leveraging SQL stored procedures. So here we can see just with a few matter of seconds, we've got a 192-page report that aggregates all of the roads within Boston. Or it's a 162-page report that aggregates all of the roads within Boston through using SQL stored procedures. So whether you have a needs to show spatial data or also connect to your non-spatial data, it's entirely possible with Geocortex Workflow and Geocortex Reporting technology. Additionally, if I want to then generate a print template of this particular site here, I can select this printing option and generate a road inventory print. So here I'll call this Boston roads, click run, and then generate a print template of the current extent if needed. So here we can see I've now got my print template showing the location in Boston where I'm zoomed into, and I've got my roads and my title that I entered, Boston Roads. So just in summary, I covered that pretty fast, but they were able to integrate Geocortex reporting with their SQL Server stored procedures to essentially allow their end users to rapidly generate these road inventory reports with just a few clicks. And that really saves staff valuable time and resources. So I just wanted to quickly cover what's next for our Geocortex products, and that's ArcGIS Experience Builder. You probably haven't heard of ArcGIS Experience Builder, but it's essentially the next generation of a web app builder for ArcGIS that Esri is developing, and it's based on the 4.x JavaScript API. Meaning, if you've done any custom widget development in Web App Builder and you want to migrate those to the Experience Builder, you're going to have to completely rewrite those. Now, we've been beta testing Esri's ArcGIS Experience Builder to ensure that the reports, print templates, and workflows that you build will be able to be migrated into this new next generation product. If you're interested in learning more about Geocortex technology or customer examples, I'd recommend checking out our latest Customer Spotlight webinars at our Geocortex blog. So if you just navigate to that link there, it'll take you to our blog where you can learn about how some of our customers are leveraging our workflow technology and workflow technology. So it's another 30-minute webinar that I've previously recorded if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about real use scenarios. Additionally, if you want to access any of these products, you can find them on the ArcGIS Marketplace. There's Geocortex Printing, Reporting, and Workflow. And I think that's all for now. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to contact me at pfingler@latitudegeo.com. I hope you've learned how you can further extend on top of Esri's Web App Builder for ArcGIS. And if you are currently a Geocortex Essentials customer and you want to leverage some of this technology in Web App Builder for ArcGIS, get in contact with your account manager to see how we can make that work for you. Bye for now.